Welcome to the Evolution of Bold podcast, where we celebrate the power of women and their journey to greatness. I'm your host, Venice Johnson, also known as the Boldest Coach. I'm excited to take you on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation. Whether you're just starting out or well into your journey, I'm here to guide you through the challenges, help you find your purpose, and to help you let go of anything that's holding you back. So take a deep breath, relax, and get ready to dive into some juicy topics that will inspire and empower you to find your level of bold and evolve into the best version of yourself. But before we get started, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you can join a community of bold women who are transforming their lives. Make sure that you hit that notification button so that as new shows are released, that you get notified. And also connect with us on social media. We want to hear your journey. We want to celebrate you on the journey. We want to support you on the journey. And also, when you share, you inspire other women in the community to share their journey as well. So now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, let's get into the juicy topic of today. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so happy to have you back. In today's show, I am picking up on part 2 of the series, Adult Peer Pressure. Whose life are you living? I'm encouraging you to go back and listen to the previous episode where I break down some really important factors that I will be building on in this part 2 of the series. I talked about identity. What is identity? And how is our individual identity influenced? What are those factors? I introduce you to societal norms, to cultural norms, to peer norms, and then ultimately that kind of leads to what I call an individual gumbo of life identity, because I'm a Southern girl and I like gumbo. So go back and listen to that prior episode so that you again can get the foundation and connect the dots, as I move deeper into the additional topic areas around whose identity are you living? So there are 4 areas that I'm going to cover in this show. So let's get started. So the one that I want to start off with is emotional intelligence. So whose identity are you living around emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence really recognizes, understand, and when you recognize and when you understand and manage the influence of your own emotion, as well as the influence of your emotion on other people. And here's the thing about this that's really pivotal and interesting from an identity standpoint is that oftentimes, without probably, unbeknownst to us, that we take on other people's emotional identity. And I'll say in this day and age, we've got social unrest. We've got, injustices happening around, our country as well as around our world, especially when it comes to Black and Brown people and when it comes to women also. And it's very easy to adopt an emotional identity because these different areas, they really pull at our heartstrings and they really challenge the value system between what's right, what's fair, and what's completely wrong. So no wonder we can fall into that trap, of taking on someone else's emotional identity, making it our own, and then navigating, our day-to-day interactions from that place of negative, emotional, I would say, connection, right? Or negative emotional identity. It's easy for us to fall into that space. And you might say, well, how do I know if I'm in that space or not? So the one thing that you want to do is really be self-aware. You really do get to be hyper vigilant, about who you are being when it comes to looking at the identity that you are living from and the identity that you're showing up in the world as. I always say to people that one of the litmus tests so that you can really check, the identity that you're living is to look at the reality of your life. It doesn't lie. So you can look at what's going on around you and that emotional interaction that you have with people and how you show up with them emotionally and how they're responding to you emotionally. But that self-awareness is so important and it's so key. You also got to be aware of your triggers. Let me just tell you something. It's easy for triggers to lie right under the surface. Like, you ever watch, like, you go to a lake, even the ocean, and you look out and the water is so beautiful, right? And you're like, oh, it's so blue. It's just, just natural and, all of the colors and it's the lights, the sunlight is beaming off the water and glistening and you're just in love with it, right? But the thing that we have to keep in mind is that under that beautiful water that you're looking at, there is a current that's happening. And that is the same as where your triggers lie, is they're right up underneath the surface. And you get to watch yourself and how you show up and what emotional identity that you take on when a trigger unfolds. We all got them. It's like biases. We all have something that we've been through in our lives that we may have not totally emotionally healed from. And it's just waiting for the right opportunity to come out and to show up and have us to be somebody that we probably are in that moment, but that's not really the authentic version of who we really, really are when you look at the depths of our hearts. Another way that I've seen, individuals take on others' emotional identity is when people around you in your circle, especially your peers, when they're not happy about something, when they're disappointed about something, mad at something, they tend to call us, we congregate. They do emotional transference of negative energy, negative emotional energy. And we find ourselves taking on that energy and adopting that emotional energy and perhaps even start to display that behavior, right? One of the things I know for sure that I can share with you is that I just remember, in different phases of my dating experiences, right? And y'all know I'm gonna tell my business and put it out there. How, if if another girlfriend of mine who was perhaps single and dating also and was having negative experiences, in her dating life with men, then she would call me and we would get on the phone and kiki, and she would talk about all the negative things that this man and all the other men, have done or haven't done and should do and ought to do. And we would just get ourselves all riled up, with that in that conversation. And then next thing you know it, we both mad as hell and got an attitude, right? And so then I would take that energy and attitude with me, that identity, when I'm going out on a date, and then I would show up in that identity with that person. And now this person probably is seeing me as this angry single woman. And that is not who I am at all. Then I would come back and get that identity reinforced by talking to my girlfriend and telling her that this is exactly what I saw, just like you said. So you see how peer pressure, and I know that my girlfriend, she is a kind person. All of my girlfriends are kind people. And I know that she didn't intentionally want to put that on me, but that's how peer pressure can happen sometimes. So you really want to look at the triggers that are lying, under that beautiful surface, what's going on, and be vigilant and looking at what it could set you off emotionally and learn how to manage, learn how to recognize, learn how to understand. And you got to ask yourself good questions. Where is this emotional energy coming from? Even if it's really exciting and palatable emotional energy, you still want to know where it's coming from, because you may want to learn to lean more into the positive side of where it's coming from versus really, reverting to the negative side of that. You also want to look at your motivation, right? Motivation is either intrinsic or it's extrinsic. So you really want to think about, on the inside, that's that trigger. Where is this coming from? On externally, it's out there, society, from the culture, from peers, where is it coming from? So that you have the opportunity to choose what's the best identity for you. The next area I want to talk about is religious and spiritual practices. So here's the deal. I'm going to break each one of these down individually. Religion has to do with the organization, of rituals, traditionals, really revolved around a popular faith. And I mentioned to you guys, I was born and raised in Louisiana. So I'm going to tell y'all, and some of y'all who grew up in the South, look at my Southern drawl coming all out. Some of y'all that grew up in the South, in the Bible Belt area, know exactly what I'm talking about. When I grew up, every Sunday, if you lived in a town in Sunday and you had Christ in your life, you was at church every Sunday. You was at Sunday school. You were ingrained in a church committee, whether that was a choir member, a usher, on the motherboard. You helped with the offering, whatever. You were ingrained, in the church. So you went to morning service. And then if you were lucky, you got a chance to go home and have Sunday dinner. So you could come back for night service, right? And if you weren't so lucky, then you would finish up morning service. Then you would have to travel to another church, whether your choir was a featured choir, or if your preacher was a featured pastor, so preacher for that day, you would have to travel and then come back to church that evening. So in the Southern culture, in my little town of Bastrop, Louisiana, that was something that was a ritual that happened every Sunday. So no wonder I grew up, really with that dogma attached to me that I have to go to church every Sunday and I have to be in church from sun up to sundown, and that I had to just give it all to, my religious faith of being a Baptist, right? And so that really shaped my identity for a very long time. However, I came at a crossroads. I think it was probably in my early 40s that I came at the crossroads that I needed something a little bit more than just religion. And no doubt, parts of religion have served me very well. Other parts of religion, and those practices, those rituals, those customs, they left me longing for more. And so when I was in my early 40s, I really started to lean more towards spiritual practices. And spiritual practices has to do more with the seeking and the experiences. It's more about your own personal spiritual journey. And so when I chose to break off from the dogma part of religion and the structure of religion, I did it quietly because it was so ingrained in the culture. I was really afraid to tell, the friends that I grew up with, also family members, that I was seeking something more experiential for me, that was more feeling for me and more, individual for me, because I was pulling away from the pack. I was pulling away from the norm, and I was also stepping into a territory where my inner circle, and including family members, didn't have, a lot of information other than saying the Holy Spirit, right? And so I found myself really kind of out there doing a lot of seeking. And I'll tell you this, I'm so glad that I personally was able to make the differentiation between the two and to find the balance of that for my own identity. I'm able now to embrace Sundays, as a day of rejuvenation, as a day of spiritual practices, that are important for me, as well as every day, being a component, adding the spiritual practice component in that for me. And it's really helped me to be well-rounded. It's helped me to manage the emotional intelligence part. And it's also allowed me to be better connected to life at large around me. So being able to embrace the identity of having my own spiritual journey, but not tag my identity to a specific religion, or to tag my identity to, a specific practice, that's more organized, has really just gave me the freedom to be. And it's been very freeing for me. So now, even as I talk to family members that still thrive, in the organized rituals of religion, I respect them. I don't talk down or against them. I understand. I understand. But I also don't push onto them my spiritual journey and the identity that I've adopted for my spiritual awareness and my spiritual growth. So I just want you to check and see where you are. And here's another litmus test. Is the religious practice, the rituals, are the rituals, the organization, the traditions, those that you have, are they really serving the woman that you are right now in your life on this journey? You get to answer that question, and you get to look at the evidence, right? I found that some parts did serve me well and other parts needed an upgrade. And I'm so happy that I did that. So give yourself some grace if you need to do an upgrade on your religion and your spiritual identity. Another area are health matters. Now, this one is really interesting because we're not just talking about the physical, the mental, the emotional, the well-being, and your Medicare. It's all of that, lumped into your healthy, your health matter lifestyle, right? Health matters lifestyle. All of that's lumped together. And it's really important to look at what's healthy versus what's unhealthy for you. And one of the best ways to be able to look at that are the habits we have around the healthy and the unhealthy. And I'm going to say this is going to make somebody uncomfortable, but you know what? Oh, well. What I noticed about myself in some of my earlier years, when I started, my evolution journey of coming into my own, is I had a lot of unhealthy habits when it came to my diet, when it came to exercise, when it came to substances, right? And let me break this down and tell you what I mean. Some of my unhealthy habits were getting together with some of my friends, kikiing, and we would go out to these places and eat all this fat full food, right? Like, ooh, girl, it's been a long week, child. I just can't wait to get me a cocktail, one or two, right? That's the substance that I meant, everybody. Going to happy hour and just, piling on the drinks, buying a pitcher, of margaritas and drinking and again, eating food that was high carb, high fat, low nutritional value, and then stuffing myself, like overeating, right? And then I would be at the table with the group of friends, and if I didn't eat, girl, you're not gonna eat that, pass it over to me. I'm gonna eat that over there, and order me one more of these, and then give me this to go. Birds of a feather flock together. So I found that at a particular point in my journey, that my identity of being, unhealthy was showing up with the habits that I had. And I didn't really pay attention to it that way until I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, listen, you're going to need to change your diet, on some things. Now, here's the tricky part. I did have, and I do have friends that are on the more healthier side. And I was going to Zumba. Some of y'all might remember my Zumba videos that I had on when I was in 24-hour doing Zumba on on Saturdays and, in the evening times. So I was out there working out, right, with that group of friends. And I was also hanging out with the unhealthy side, doing unhealthy habits. And when I went to the doctor, that came the pivotal time for me to make a different choice. I had to make a different choice. And I'm so glad that my doctor informed me so that I could be able to choose what health identity do I want to now embark on, and that I see myself as, and how will having this healthy self identity, right? How would this help me to really be able to be my best self when I'm showing up in any aspect of my life? Now, I still go to happy hour, but I'm down to one drink, right? And it takes me all night to drink that one drink. And now I look at my food differently. I look at my food as fuel, not just as food that I want to stuff my mouth with. I pay attention now to what it feels like in my body. Even when I'm with other people, I'm listening and hearing, what their experience is with, interacting with diet and also exercise, but I don't adopt theirs. And I've also learned to have some isolation when it comes to my own health journey and my own health habits. I needed that so that I could be able to really be proud of myself from a perspective of good, healthy habits. And I needed that to create my own identity that I know what level of health is important to me and how I want to show up healthy in every aspect of my life, as I mentioned before. So I want you to just really take a look at, those healthy versus unhealthy habits. And I remember too, at one point, and this is a culture thing, that I remember when I was going through my weight release, and I remember, friends or family members saying, don't get too skinny. And some of y'all ladies, y'all have heard men say that before too. Don't lose the thighs, don't lose the butt, but here's the deal. What my response to that is, I'm going to lose whatever it is that I need to lose to put my body in the most healthiest position possible. I had to stand up and say that. And it's in my head, it sounded a little uncomfortable, but out of my mouth it came, y'all. And when I said that, that allowed me to embrace and embody my healthy identity even more for myself. So now I'm like, no, I'm going to give my body what it needs. So I want you to just really step back and look at whose health identity are you living? Is it the peer pressure that's coming at you that you kind of stuck in that space? Is it the cultural pressure where it's like you're getting healthy, but they don't want you to out health them? I want you to take a look at that. And the last area that I want to talk about is lifestyle choices. This one is such a pivotal area for us in this moment in time of the life that we're living. Lifestyle choices are all about your individual decisions. It's about your personal habits. It's about your relationships. But there's one area specifically that I want to really zero in under lifestyle choices. The consumer culture. Y'all, this consumer culture is really driving behavioral lifestyle choices for all of us. We are constantly bombarded with self images, with body images, right? Around what our body should look like and the standard that our body should be. We're consistently bombarded with images around our hair. And, if our hair should be straight, if it should be curly, if it should be natural. We are consistently bombarding with, people that are out there living their best lives, and they're flying all over the world, and they're working from these remote backdrop exotic places and making us feel like, our lives are crappy. We've seen, lifestyle choices where women are in their soft eras, and so making us, come across, if we're not there yet, feeling like that is the ultimate identity that we need to have in that, right? We've seen this from the relationship aspect when we've been bombarded with messages about high value men and high value women, and then we go and adopt, oh yeah, I'm trying to be a high value woman, and all of this. Ooh, that was a lot, just even saying that. All of that is fed to us through social media, and then we embody that and become that imagery that we see. And sometimes we don't even realize that we are taking on that imagery because it has just become so pervasive and so normal to us. So I want you to really stop and think about your lifestyle as a whole. And what areas from the consumer culture have you adopted as your own identity? What are those areas? And look at yourself in the mirror and really look at, the authentic you. Have you changed something about yourself to fit someone else's beauty standards? You know, are you experiencing any type of eating disorder because you need to fit a particular body image? Or perhaps are you doing things to your body to change the physical image because you think that you will be more attractive or more liked by a particular group of people or a person? So I really want you to step back and take a look at that. Are you overspending, putting yourself in debt? Or perhaps are you putting yourself at risk, based on lifestyle choices because of the identity that you feel that you need to adopt? One of the best things that I could have done for myself when it comes to lifestyle choices is to really sit down and get clear about what's important to me. I mentioned, I think on maybe podcast episode, maybe the very 00 episode, I talked about being in a season of aloneness. Even though I'm not lonely, but being in my season and on the journey of aloneness has given me a lot of time to be introspective and reflective on these areas of identity that I'm talking to you about, in this episode, as well as the previous ones. And it's allowed me to really talk to myself. And by the way, you are not crazy if you talk to yourself. Please spend time talking to yourself. Because when you talk to yourself, you start connecting with experiences around whatever it is that you're talking to yourself about. You start remembering things, you start checking your body to see how it feels, even when you bring it up a memory, or if you are talking about, perhaps the vision, of what's next for you, you can feel the excitement, or feel when something doesn't feel right in your body. Spend some time with yourself and be hyper aware. I said hyper vigilant before, like be hyper vigilant with your self-awareness so that you can start to become who you really are meant to be. And listen, this doesn't happen overnight, everybody. And I only touched on several different areas around identity, right? You get to be with you and to look at all those aspects of the identity of who you are and how that's showing up in different aspects of your life. But I'm sharing this with you because it's important to stop and to really take inventory about who are you in this moment and who is the woman that you see yourself becoming. And who do you need to be in order to step in your becoming of that woman? What identities do you need to let go of and perhaps adopt? What behaviors will support the new identity of yourself? What character traits do you need to develop to strengthen and support the behavior as well as the identity? And what actions do you need to continually commit to and be intentional around to solidify those different important areas of growth for you? I've been on this journey for a while, and I am the product that you see of a woman who has created and adopted her own identity and navigating it through the world so beautifully that the joy and the fulfillment is upon my life, and I'm happy for it. And I hope that what I've shared with you sparks this in you as you move further into the evolution of your own bold. And you see, I'm saying it loud and proud with my t-shirt, right? Bold, big, and bad. So for those of you that may be catching this podcast on my YouTube channel, please make sure to check it out. But you'll also probably see different pictures, of me around also with this t-shirt on. As a matter of fact, I just dropped this as a upcoming limited edition merch alert. So make sure that you're following me on the different social media platforms, and you'll see my t-shirt, bold, big, bad. It's red on top, bold letters, white letters in big, and then red letters in bad. So that way you'll know specifically the t-shirt that I'm talking about. But all right, as we recap and wind down this episode, we talked today about 4 areas: emotional intelligence, recognizing, understanding, and managing your emotions, one's emotions, and the influence that your emotions has on other people, right? We talked about religious and spiritual practices for you to check your identity meter in those areas and see if those things still work for you, from the organization of religion and also from the seeking and experiencing, or perhaps you might create, a hodgepodge of a little bit of both and find what works for you. We talked about health matters, looking at healthy versus unhealthy habits and really looking at self-care and wellness for yourself and taking ownership and taking charge of that. And we rounded it out with lifestyle choices and how consumer culture is really impacting the authentic you and perhaps how you may be showing up in the world. So thank you for your time and spending and hanging out with me. I would love to hear your ahas. What came up for you? Drop them in the comments, on social media platforms. Also, you can drop them on the podcast website. But I would love to hear, what really came up for you. And remember, when you share a comment, you give permission to other women to comment as well, because if they see that you're being vulnerable in sharing, they're going to be vulnerable and sharing as well. So until next time, next episode, I want you to always strive to be in your bold, big, and bad with no permission needed. I'll see you next episode. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Evolution of Bold podcast. I hope you found the conversation as inspiring and empowering as I did. It's always a pleasure to share the stories of my journey along with those of other remarkable women who have shown us what it means to live life boldly. I'd love to know what stood out to you the most. Your feedback is really important to me. So please leave a comment in the feed or on one of our social media channels. And don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification button before you go. Stay connected with us for more insights and exclusive content. Keep evolving, stay bold, and always live your truth. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for our next show. Until next time, I'm Denise Johnson, the Boldness Coach, cheering you on in your journey towards your level of bold.